Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Your home for all content Lord of the Rings home. I wanted to make a video about how good is Gandalf in the raids, even just at 5 stars. So I unlocked him last week. I've done a full raid with him. I had him at G8 for like half the raid. And then he's at G9 now. And I have maxed out his skills quite a bit. But basically my sort of conclusion is that even at 5 stars, he's much like the other legendaries where you have a good team around them, then they can do difficulty 4 pretty much no problem. I was able to do difficulty 4 in the first 3 chapters, not the last one. I still struggled to do difficulty 4 in chapter 4 with my characters, but every other chapter he can do difficulty 4, even though he is 5 stars. So it's just about who you put around him. If you are maybe don't have too many teams doing difficulty 4, I still think he's basically an easy 900k in there. And I think you should save a few resources to kind of get him up to a baseline level of, I would say, level 60, gear tier 8, and then 4s across the board. And then, like, you honestly can leave most of his skills at 4, and some of them you don't even need to bring up to 4. His leadership, you could probably leave it at 1 if you're using him as a plug-and-play character. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a second here. And everything else can probably stay at 4. I think it's important to get some of this stuff. Level 2 ability here, right? You don't need to upgrade that much, but his special 1 is one I think you should first be the first one to upgrade. I'll talk a little bit about that more in a second. Again, level 4 here so that you're always stunning on a special 2. This is not as that, like level 4 is fine. Cleansing the Banes I think is pretty good. The extra healing, not so much. And then because we don't have like a full fellowship squad, or you might be using him as a plug and play, I think you're okay leaving his passive at level 4 too. It's fine. He has so many skills that you need to upgrade. What's nice is that they don't all need to be level 6. And I think you should eventually start to put more and more resources into him and build him up, especially if we get the 2 remaining members of the fellowship squad. I think that makes a lot of sense. But you can use him right out of the gate, right off rip, at 5 star with relatively low skill investment. I think when you do start to max his skills, his special 1 is the first one you should be maxing because it grants Eagle Eye and protection for 2 turns. You get that 2 turns for all of your fellowship squad member, or the 3 fellowship squad members, and then Eagle Eye and protection to all other targets. Getting Eagle Eye and protection to everybody is very, very good. And it's basically his most useful skill, I would say, in the raids, especially because of the Eagle Eye. The protection is really nice too, and adds a lot of survivability, lends a lot of survivability to Gandalf, but the Eagle Eye is really where it's at. And basically having it on a skill instead of triggered through some sort of passive or leadership is very nice as well. So I would say Mithrandir's Light is sort of the one to go for if you're going to upgrade one particular skill to 6. And then you can start on his special 2 as well. To add that extra burning duration, I'm not sure how much you want to... this is not as necessary as doing his special 1, I'll say. You don't even have to like max his leadership. I do want to talk a little bit about... Let me switch back to him so you can see him. I basically do want to talk a little bit about how you should proceed when you unlock him. I'm going to kind of assume that you probably have 5 decently upgraded raid teams if you are unlocking Gandalf, at least around the time that this video is going up. And so you kind of have to make this decision. Do I have the other fellowship squad members, Gimli and Legolas, already upgraded? In which case, I think you should probably just cannibalize your lowest scoring team for each chapter and just take some of those most useful members, the members that have the most stars and the most gear, the most levels that are survivable and probably useful as well, and then sort of build a team based on that. If not, if you don't have Legolas and Gimli, probably Gimli. I think a lot of people have Legolas compared to Gimli. I think it's probably good to start working on them, but in the meantime, you can do something like slot him into a Rohan team or another team where maybe the leadership ability isn't as important. Like Eowyn's leadership is not great and not necessary for the Rohan synergy that you get in the raid. So you can kind of just slot him in there, use his lead so that you get Istari's gift, and then kind of proceed from there. I found that I often was cannibalizing my Rohan team and using Rohan characters with the Fellowship, and also I was using Rumel and Biffer with him quite a bit. So I've got a bunch of raid footage that I want to show you and go through, and kind of, I'm not going to do like deep dive strategy analysis because I'm not 100% sure the best way to play him at the moment. Takes a little bit of getting used to, but I'm going to show you some footage from my previous raid. I've gotten better with him. Even since I recorded some of this footage, like my chapter 2 raid was a run that I'm going to show you is difficulty 3, and I ended up submitting like a 1.3 mil difficulty 4 run, I want to say. We can check. So I'm not going to give you the deep level analysis, but what I will do is I'm going to basically make an unlisted video, and I'll put that in a pinned comment, and that'll be my chapters 1 through 4 raid runs, kind of no commentary, as an unlisted video. So if you are more curious about that type of thing, you can go and look. So yeah, you can see there 1.42 mil actually with this particular squad at difficulty 4. Again, I think I might have gotten him to gear 9 at that point. Not that I think it was a change of personnel that made the big difference, but I'll talk about that more right now. Let me see if I think that's basically all I wanted to talk about. It is going to be situational where you're using him. I think he works somewhat as a plug-and-play character, but if you're going to continue to build him up, which I think you should, because, like I said earlier, he is sort of like the other legendary characters in that, you know, even at 5 stars, he can do serious work in difficulty 4. Then you're going to have to sort of cannibalize some other teams. And I think Hobbits work well, Rohan works well, some of the dwarves, specifically Biffer and Rumel, work well. Balin can work well. I didn't find he worked as well, but my Biffer is 7 stars and my Balin is 6 stars, and I think that that's a decent reason why. Let's get into the raid footage. Who's that? Who's that guy? We got Gandalf to do commentary. All right, here is chapter 1. So, like I said, I like Biffer and Rumel, and I like Gandalf lead so that I can get the Astari's gift. But you could do this Balin lead as well, I think. And I've seen that has worked decently well. I just don't think my Balin is like ready for difficulty 4 in chapter 1. So I think you kind of, you know, depending on whether you're chapter 1 or chapter 3 or difficulty 3 or difficulty 4, your opening is probably going to change a little bit. But basically, the fact that Gandalf can give Eagle Eye is very important. So like what I just did there with Legolas is something I've chosen to not do moving forward. I basically wait and use his special 1 to get Eagle Eye first, and then I will use his Legolas's special 2 or whatever it is, the multi-hit 1, special 1, sorry. And he will then basically just put all the stacks of Bomber on himself, and then you don't have to really worry about it. You can use his special 1 right out of the gate. Again, something I then liked to do is I would use his special 2 first and stun somebody. That way I could just get myself a little bit of an extra, some more breathing room. And I would either stun the Shadow Seer, because those are the big bads, especially in difficulty 4, in my opinion, or Skull Crusher, because the Skull Crushers are bad and everybody already knows that. I like Rumel because this team doesn't have a lot of ways to heal if you aren't Fellowship, and Rumel provides that. Plus, he just provides a lot of defensive survivability. He's very good. And then the passive on Biffer, being able to get out all of those, defensives to everybody when there's these big attacks, is also really good. This blue mark here is Astari's gift. And the way that this worked, I've seen a few questions about this. When Gandalf takes his first turn, he passes out Astari's gift to somebody, and the person who gets that basically does the assist. So you can see that Biffer did it, right? So I'm going to do special 1 here, and then Biffer does the assist. It doesn't go back to Gandalf after Biffer takes his turn. Biffer is going to then pass it on to somebody else. What this means is that you it's a little bit RNG as to like how good it is. Because if Biffer passes it to the person with the next highest turn meter, he didn't here, but it would have been Gimli, then Gimli's going to go and he's going to assist with Gimli, and then Gimli's going to go and he's going to pass it to somebody else, and then you can essentially get a lot of assists going right in a row, right? But you can also pass it to somebody who just went and they have the lowest turn meter, in which case it's going to take a while to kind of get that assist back in. So especially for chapter 1, it can be a little bit RNG-y, a little bit RNG heavy. It's not too bad, I found. One thing to note with Astari's gift is that if Gandalf dies while he has it, then no more Astari's gift. But if he dies and somebody else has it, then they will keep passing it around until the person who has it dies. That's just a little bit of a note there. I think I get 1.3-ish mil on here, but basically the whole point of this particular chapter is you're sort of passing taunt to Gimli as much as you can, either through his special 2 or through Bifur's special 2, so that everybody else can just kind of do their business. You got multi-hit attacks with Legolas in his special 1 and his basic, and that works really well with Eagle Eye. And then also you've got multi-hit attacks with Rumel. It's a little bit harder to time it with Rumel because for non-fellowship allies, that Eagle Eye only lasts 1 turn. So that's kind of the name of the game. But what I really want to talk about for these chapters, as we're watching the footage here, is like when you should be using the You Cannot Pass. I'm going to pretty much always recommend you're pretty much always going to use the special 1. That seems to be the most useful for the You Cannot Pass, but it's just a matter of timing it. For chapter 1, the strategy that I found that works the best, I don't get it off in this particular footage, but I did it last night, and what I found typically works best here is you do the You Cannot Pass ability once you get to about 1 million points in difficulty 4. And then you do that, and depending on the situation, you can either stun everybody or try and stun everybody, or you can heal and cleanse all of the Banes. I typically end up using the special 1 more often than not. And I think it's probably a good idea to do it kind of like in a situation like this. Like, this would be a good time to consider doing it. I'm not quite at 1 million points, but maybe when I get down to just 1 War Guard and I kind of have like that break between waves, that would be a good place to do it. The other thing to note is that although the You Cannot Pass skill specifically says you cannot get bonus turn meter, turns out if you have a last stand set on him and you go below the threshold, you get to take your turn. So you should put a last stand set on him for the time being until they fix that, right? I think that makes the most sense, because when he goes into You Cannot Pass, it doesn't show it. It doesn't give him a taunt icon, but he is taunting. And so you want that ability to kind of survive. He is at 5 stars. And so especially in difficulty 4, he's going to be taking some massive hits. And I think it's probably just better to have last stand on him for the time being, especially while that still works. So little tip for you. I hope they don't fix that anytime soon. I know it may seem like I'm taking advantage of a bug by using the Eagle Eye multi-hit thing. They've kind of changed their tune on that, and they're just sort of monitoring it, and they're not treating it as a bug at the moment. So maybe that'll stay as intended for the time being, in which case you definitely should be using it as a way to do difficulty 4 especially. Okay, I think that's all I want to talk about for chapter 1. Yep. All right, let's move on to chapter 2. I'll show you what I got here. 1.36. I got 1.5 mil yesterday. All right, chapter 2. I'm showing you this team with Fro and Rumel, and this is difficulty 3. I ended up doing like I just showed you. You know, I swapped out Fro for Bifur and went into difficulty 4, got 1.4 million points. The key, I think Bifur works really well with this team in particular because, especially for chapter 2, Bifur has a remove boon on basic, and so does Gandalf. And so you're really able to control momentum in difficulty 4, where normally what you have to do is land a Bane, which becomes increasingly harder, and then crit to remove momentum, right? You don't have to do that if they're just on their basic, they remove momentum, because that doesn't have to pass a focus or resistance check. I know people think it does, but it does not. The other key here is that he has Eagle Eye. And Eagle Eye means your attacks cannot be blocked. And blocking attacks is how he starts to build up momentum, especially once he's gotten, in rage. He gets additional block chance, but his additional block chance doesn't matter if your attack can't be blocked. So I think the combination of having Eagle Eye and being, having 2 characters that can basically take momentum off without having to worry about crits or landing Banes, Really, really, really good combination. I will try difficulty 5 with them, I think, today, just to see if they can do it. They might not be, I don't know. My Thorin team can do difficulty 5, but Gandalf may be a little too squishy. I'm not entirely sure. We'll see. The other thing I want to mention here, though, is that this team in particular struggles a little bit with getting down the side adds and finishing off the topples because they don't have a slow, and you basically end up relying on Legolas and to a lesser extent Gimli's damage. It's fine. The burn, pretty great on this particular chapter, and this is kind of why I want to keep the 2 focus glyphs on him. I don't know. Yeah, but other than that, I don't know. I'm still sort of testing all that stuff out. The last thing I will mention for chapter 2 here is when should you be using that you cannot pass? When should you start it? And I think it's basically when he goes into a topple. And if he goes into a topple and you can use his special 1, I'm going to recommend you use his special 1 still. But then I think you should use his you cannot pass, especially if you are in the second topple and things are looking pretty dicey, or if you manage to get to the third topple. I think that's the appropriate time to do it. Which skill you use, I think, again, is situational. I know people are... I'm always tempted to do his special 2 because it's like, oh, a stun and a burn. And I think that's useful, especially with the cave troll. But I think I found that just getting people healed up and getting... making sure that they don't have any buffs on them turned out to be really useful as well. So mess around with that. See what you can do there. I don't get a very good score here. I think like 700 something. Damn, yeah. Like I said, though, 1.4 mil previously. So that team is actually pretty good at finishing off. Even then, even though they don't have like a slow, pretty good at finishing the cave troll to get close to max difficulty, which is difficult to do. Chapter 3, I like using Éomer and Eothane. And the reason I like doing that is because you can kind of pass the provokes between Eothane and Gimli, and then Éomer is just good. And I use Bloodlust on Éomer because you can do that chapter 3 sort of cheese method, right, with him, with Rohan and Ironhide and whatnot. And so actually what kind of the name of the game for me in chapter 3 was essentially pass provokes between Eothane and Gimli, and then essentially try to get everybody down low enough that I could kill them with Éomer, and then take multiple turns with Éomer, making sure I always can have my summon up if I need to. That gets me extra points. In general, I think that's just a good way to do it. The chapter 3 cheese is slowly but surely making its way into difficulty 4, at least on my sort of end. When you should use you cannot pass? Well, it's a little bit difficult with this particular comp. And I think in this footage, I'll show you that Last Stand works when he's in you cannot pass. What I don't know is, I don't remember... Basically, the taunt, it's not a taunt or a provoke. He gets it. A taunt, like, they always attack him, but it doesn't, like, give him that status effect. So what I don't recall is whether it clears marked or not. Because ideally what you want to happen, right, is I have Eothane, I have Gimli. I get them to have, like, a good amount of capture stacks. And then I go into you cannot pass, and that takes the marked, hopefully, from what, all of them, and then I can do his special 1, clear all of the capture stacks, and sort of have a little bit of a reset, right, for this particular case here. But it's still important to show you that the Last Stand thing works. But if you can time it and it does clear marked, then that's the way you should be doing it, basically. And then that's how you're going to get all the points here. Okay, so I think the next hit here, he's going to get his last... There you go. Last Stand triggered. Boom. And I like doing that, right? It clears all of the capture, and it heals everybody up, and then you can basically start over again. It does do a lot of screen shaking, unfortunately, which I'm not the biggest fan of, but that's fine. And then I think I get basically about 1 million points here. So I think this can be timed a little bit better. Maybe... Let me pause that. Let's see what I ended up with if I ended up just submitting this run or did something else. Okay. Oops. Wait, no, that would still... It should still show last raid, right? Sure. no. Okay, so that's the one I ended up submitting. So I feel like it doesn't clear marked, which makes it an issue, because then you end up with at least Gimli or Ethane dying. That's fine. That's how I found it works the best. I'm sure that there are other sort of methods in here as well that make it work. I like Aemir over Eowyn, and I do like that you have at least 2 taunts to kind of juggle that around with Gimli, because I think that's where he's useful in Chapter 3. That's kind of where I'm at there. Let's move on to Chapter 4. So I made a mistake. Yeah, 1 mil points. That's the one I submitted. I made a mistake and accidentally used Gimli with my normal dwarf comp with Lord Balin. So I don't have the Fellowship Trio here, but what I ended up doing was essentially swapping Naramiri out of my Rivendell squad because I could get 900k without her, and then putting Naramiri in here with Eowyn for that cleanse and the disable, and then also Aemir because he can get a summon and he's got pretty decent damage. And I found that that has been important. I actually don't know who I would take out to put Gimli in here. Naramiri is really nice for the extra healing because this team doesn't have like a lot of sustain to keep up otherwise. And yeah, his special 2 is basically useless in Chapter 4 because you can't stun and you can't burn the Balrog. So really the goal here is just cleanse with Naramiri, cleanse with Eowyn, and try and do as much damage with Legolas and Aemir as I possibly can, and the summon when he's up, and deal with that. The nice thing about this team, because of Istari's gift, and because of Aemir here, I really don't have to worry about flame stacks that much. So I don't need to have like Lord Balin's crazy 3-turn cleanse, because I'm pretty much always counter, like taking out of turn attacks and really managing the flame form. And then because I get Eagle Eye with Gandalf, you actually can do a pretty good job of managing shadow form as well. When should you use the You Cannot Pass? This is a little bit tricky, and basically what I've determined is you need to use You Cannot Pass when you know you have a cleanse up. Because he taunts with You Cannot Pass, the Balrog is going to come and do his swipey, in which case you, actually, even if you cleanse it, you still might not be, I'm not entirely sure, because he basically doesn't end up using the swipe when I do the You Cannot Pass here. Yeah, so I use it here. So he doesn't end up using the swipe on me, but that's what you want to avoid. But I think it increases your stamina, so you may not want to use it anyway. This kind of brings me to my point, though. If you're got a, disable or ability block on Gandalf, or if you can't use his special 1 and special 2 under the You Cannot Pass, it's basically useless. Being at 5 stars, and he just doesn't have the damage to make his basic really worth it to use for the You Cannot Pass. I don't care that it's like 1,000% damage. It's 1,000% of nothing. It basically tickles the cave troll and the Balrog. Just like, doo-doo-doo. It's not good. So able to heal there, which I really think was great because Naramir basically just died, and I just wanted to make sure I could eke out some more points. Don't know why I'm thinking about this. Should be special 1. There you go. Just trying to get the flame form down and finish this out. This team is also really good at doing multi-hit attacks, so it can deal with the flame form pretty well. And because Aemir Summon often can be a target for the shadow form, I think this team actually works pretty well overall. I'm not really sure I want to use Gimli here. We'll see. Actually, yeah, I kind of like this team. It's pretty good. I think I got, what did I end up with? It's not 900k. I think I could get to 900k, especially if I delayed Gandalf dying and had a little bit more survivability and got like my Naramiri's heals to be a little bit better, but I think I could get there. So I'm at about 760k. So that's where I'm going to leave you for this video. Again, I'm going to leave a comment. In the pinned comment, there's going to be a link to an unlisted video that just shows all of this raid footage with no commentary on it. So go check that out if you're interested. But yeah, 5-star Gandalf, totally raid viable, totally great. Totally, I can see why they call him a legendary. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.